was going to work out, but I did tell Donna that I was going to talk for the next 15 minutes about her, but I left my notes home, so I can't do that. So I am, as Donna said, I'm the Sullivan County Clerk, and my office is, there's a lot goes on in my office. So I just very briefly tell you what goes on there. We're in charge of DMV. We have all the county records in Sullivan County are in my office. We have the civil department. We do passports. We also do all the notaries are stored in my office, as well as we take care of the pistol permit department. So it's very busy. We have about 5,000 people in the wintertime go through my office every month. In the summer, our population here in Sullivan County goes from 80,000 to in the neighborhood of 350 to 450,000 people. So we have a tremendous influx of people. So as far as research and genealogy, I had an interesting case come in our deed department. So in the back of my office, we have all the old records. So it's very interesting to look in these books because they go back into the 1800s. And when you look at the way deeds and information was entered, it's really calligraphy. It's amazing, the penmanship and how the script in these books, it's amazing. I also find it amazing that it's no longer, it's a lost art. Longhand or script writing, they are no longer being taught, which I find amazing. I actually had to teach my younger staff, nothing to do with intelligence, how to read and write a check because they didn't understand what a check was. That's where we're at. So we did have a gentleman in my office. He was researching an older cemetery. It was for the poor people cemetery. So if you go back in time, when somebody didn't have money, they were buried in, they would take a plot and they would just bury people, and they didn't have any money for headstones. So sometimes it was either just, you know, a piece of wood, or they would just take a field stone and just lay it there. So he was in Monticello and he was trying to trace the piece of property. So he went back into my department, and I have staff that will help you. So if you come into my office and you're trying to research something, looking up old deeds, old maps, we'll help you. So what happened was he was trying to track down where this cemetery ended up. So on behind Maria Ford, there used to be an old boarding house there, or a poor person's house. So he was able to research that. He found that property in my office. He was able to get the map, look at the deed, and then he figured out that the cemetery ended up over by the Holiday Mountain. There's a cemetery there on that road. So he found that on that deed was a separate piece of parcel. And on the map, he found that parcel, found it tied to a cemetery that's there. And he's actually got Mike Taylor, who owns the Holiday Mountain. He's helping them research, and they're going to bring in, I believe, the Boy Scouts, and they're going to be renovating this cemetery. So this is all the research was going on in my office. Yes.
All right. So I called up the Holiday Mountain Cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing this for 36 years.
Oh, you're a newcomer.
My people have been here since 17.
Wow.
Judge Thompson. Up the hill from where the Prince Cemetery is there, and then what I call the Holiday Mountain Cemetery. And you go up a steep hill, and there's a lot of headstones, but there's no engravings on them. They're just stones. Is that the poorhouse cemetery?
So let me say this. I have no idea. So I don't know. I haven't physically gone there. I just, my experience, this gentleman was in the office and we were just helping him track it down. So it very well could be. But what he was saying, there weren't any headstones. There were just field stones because there was no money for a headstone for these people.
Well, it's not only that, there wasn't anyone here to carve it.
Oh, that could be too.
The earliest stones
Sounds like land.
I
think it is.
1800.
Yeah.
And that was John Brooks, and that's down by the Never Sink, right under the bridge that goes, the new bridge that goes. But there's other stones that were there. But let me.
Well, we have some very, very old cemeteries in the county. So we have a lot of history in the county. It's really amazing how old and what went on here in days past. And we have some very innovative people that were born and came from this. Otto Hillig. I live in Parksville, in the Hillig's Castle is at the top of my hill, and Otto Hillig lived at the top of the hill that I live on. And it's Rich. He was like the first transatlantic flight that he did. He drove across the country. So we have people in the county that are pretty amazing people, and some of these cemeteries reflect it. Not that I want to draw on cemeteries, but when I was in high school here, I was actually had a friend of mine. We would go to cemeteries and they would do. It escapes me what it's called. Do the tracings, the rubbings, and it was very interesting because they're very early places. So my office it's easy. You just go to the Sullivan County Clerk's page and you can get the phone number there. It's 807-0411 is our phone number. And in the back, we're very busy, but we will do our best to help you. And if you've never been there, and if this is kind of your interest is looking going back in time, just to see some of these books, it's amazing. They're our only record. When I first got there, I was worried about somebody stealing a page out of it. So I had cameras installed. So that's me. I put cameras because I wanted to keep an eye on everybody, right? So because it's some of these records are the only records we have. And we also did a lot of them digital. So the new deeds, if you have any recording, they're online. And we provide a service. You can go online, iqs.com, and you can look at any newer deed from 1990 forward is all online. So you can do that from your home. But the older stuff, they never find money for me to get it digitized. So it's not digitized. So they're still in my office, and you can open them up and you can research. We'll show you how to do it. You'll find the index number and you'll look that way. And we have very good people that know these older maps. Some of them are very old. We just got a grant to have a lot of them digitized because they were getting damaged from opening and closing. But it's a very interesting place. So if anybody here needs any help with anything, that's what we're there for. Do we have?
Do
Sure.
you make copies of the deeds?
Yes.
Charge, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, there is a charge. I think we charge now 50 cents a copy, which some people give me a hard time about 50 cents, but it's kind of silly. I'll have somebody come up to my counter and they're like, well, what do I owe you? You owe me $1.50. And they look at me, $1.50. What's $1.50? But we do charge, and that covers the cost of the copy machines, which is very expensive. The paper, the toners are a fortune now. We go through a lot of paper. It's amazing what we go through in our office, paper-wise.
How about court records? Are they in a different building, the court records?
We have all the Supreme Court. I'm also the chief clerk of the Supreme Court. So we have all the civil documents, and you can come in and get copies of any civil judgments. The courthouse has other ongoing criminal. They keep most of the criminal records up there.
And you could go there and research at the courthouse?
You can go there and make a request. How the courthouse does it, you might have to do that by a written request. That might be how they do it there. I got to stop saying How many ahs did I do? When you're speaking, you got to mentally not say right? So if I said too many, please, raise your hand. Tell me too many ahs. But you could find out and go onto their website. Tara, there's a woman there named Tara. She's in charge of that. She's very nice, very friendly, and I'm sure she would help you. In the judgment department, you can go to there and you can make a request, and we'll help you there. There's a lot of judgments that go on. We handle a lot of those type of cases, and they'll go back in time for time. I keep doing it. See. But anyway, there's another part. A lot of people come in and research the judgments, and they'll go back and look at like old mortgages. They'll go back in time and they'll tie an old mortgage. And some of the deeds is very interesting. On the deeds, they'll actually say, at the large tree next to the large rock, you'll find the stream and such stones from that stream. And we come across that we have title searches in our office. The title searches guarantee your title. So what they do is they search the title. If there's a problem with your title, that's called title insurance. They will insure the property. That's why most people, I recommend getting a title company and title insurance. It's an important thing. And I just want to close with one thing. I just want to tell everybody, I don't know how many people are property owners here. I did institute something. This isn't to do with genealogy, but it's an important thing. We actually have fraud. It's called title fraud. People will go in and they'll take your deed and they'll either do a mortgage against it. They'll transfer your property. They'll sell it. They'll get the money. They take off. Last month or the month before, we had an arrest with somebody that fraudulently went in and did something with the title. We found out about it and we prosecuted them, and they were actually arrested. If you go to the Sullivan County Clerk's page, on the left-hand side, you'll see land. Under land, it says land fraud. You click that, you can register your email and your property. And if anybody does anything with your name or your property, you'll get an instant email to protect you. There's no charge for that. It's something we can provide.
Could you repeat that again?
Sullivan County Clerk's page,
Okay. Online.
online. On the left-hand side, you'll see land documents,
Land documents.
and you'll see land fraud. You click on land fraud and then you follow the prompts. And that's just something to protect everybody that has property in the county. Yes.
Now, you might want to repeat any of the questions from the crowd because they don't come down there unless you say what the question is sometimes, right? Because the microphone's not in the audience. And do you have any kind of census records that are, like state census, anything there?
We have nothing to do really census. Now, we don't handle, we have going back in time. I also do naturalization ceremonies. So we do have old naturalization certificates going back very, very old. So sometimes we'll have to look those up for research. Yes.
I can answer that question. When
Oh.
George Cook was in your position, I was working as a lawyer in the building. I took my lunch hours. The old census records that were the originals were in that building, were where the library records are.
Right.
And so there was 1925, I believe 1875. 1925 shouldn't have been available at that time because there's a 72-year lapse, but it was there. I think it was 1865, and I don't remember the other. But George and I talked about it because I've known George for a long time, and the county can't get a grant, or could not at that time get a grant to have those books refurbished. And so he and I talked, and I thought, well, perhaps maybe he asked me about having it sent over to the Historical Society in Hurleyville. It ended up being sent there. I have no idea if it's been refurbished. I don't think it has, but it really should have been. So there are some original books that are there. Now, I know when Bill Burns was president of the Historical Society, he discouraged people from using them.
Probably to keep them from wearing out. What's your first name, dear?
Linda.
Linda, thank you for offering to volunteer in the clerk's office. We're going to be having Linda come in and she's going to be helping us all. So thank you for volunteering. Keep raising your hand and we're going to get you signed up for something else.
Go back to the library where the books were, the deed books, you bring M&Ms.
Okay, there you go. So there are lots of records in there and you're welcome to look. Yes, we're going to volunteer you. We're going to volunteer you for something next.
How about, do you ever have to send people to townships for legal records? Are there things like Town of Fallsburg, Town of Liberty that aren't in Monticello that they would have?
Yes, sometimes the marriage certificates we don't store. We don't have marriage certificates in our office. We handle all divorce cases, so we make people happy on the other end. But the marriage licenses there are in the town by township. What else do we have to send there? Notary, sometimes we have to certify certain notary publics. And there are records that we do send to the town sometimes, tax records, sometimes they have them, we don't have them yet, things like that. But it's, we have a lot of town clerks and they're very important. It's really the heart of a town and the heart of the county is really the clerk's office. That's really where it all happens.
I'm sorry to interrupt. However, there were some marriage records that were available at the Sullivan County Historical Society that the staff that worked there, volunteers, had put together. Now, that's like a roll of the dice whether you find something, but I did find something for someone else. So there are some miscellaneous marriage.
Well, there you have it. If you can't find it in my office, and you can't find it with the town clerk, go to the historical site. You got a shot there. And you, what, right. Oh, and incidentally, if you do have a birth certificate that is by a hospital, we cannot take it for an enhanced driver's license. It has to be a state birth certificate. Has nothing to do with this, but just so you know, if you come in for your enhanced license, by 2025, everybody's going to have a passport, real ID, or enhanced driver's license to fly domestically. That's coming down the pike. So just bear it in mind. It just popped in my head about the birth certificate. So I'm going to go. I don't want to hold you up. You got a lot to do. I would like to thank you for the invitation. It's a beautiful building. It's an absolutely gorgeous building. So thank you very much for having me. If we can help anybody in the future, just let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Russell, for coming. Really appreciate it. And you left your cards over there, right? So anybody, okay, so if you have any other questions, there's cards right over there. Who's next? I don't have, can I, you got it? Did you give it to me? Oh, it's here. Yeah, okay. It is, okay. So next we have Ruth Hugler from the Sullivan County Democrat. Ruth, I'm gonna try to get this thing working now. Hopefully it'll work. I'll give this back to you at the end of the day. Have this working, if you can hold both, or this you can clip if you want to try to
I
clip
need
it
an
on.
extra arm.
I know, right? Tell me about it. All right. Or maybe I can just lay this down. No, you can't do that. You have to
No,
hold
because
it.
it's too close to the monitor.
Yeah, I know. I can see that. Wow. I'm gonna try to move that thing. Yep. That has to go all the way to the other end. Yep, there you go. And if you can just, do you want me to clip this on? That might be better.
That might be better.
And then you don't have to
Okay.
worry. No, that's not the way it goes. Maybe that's better. I don't know.
Wired.
There you go. I don't know.
All right. Thank you. I'm Ruth Hugler. I'm from the Sullivan County Democrat, and the main reason I'm here today is that this column down the decades is something that's run in the Democrat for 50 years. And before that, it ran in the Sullivan County Record for almost the same length of time. And it's been my pleasure for the last possibly 15 years or so to take care of the down the decades column. There's a little bit of a history behind it. How many here are subscribers to the Democrat? Oh, good number of people. So you're pretty familiar with down the decades. We've been told that that is the main reason that some people subscribe to the Democrat because it's very entertaining and it really gives you a lot of information about people and what was happening in the county. I don't know if everybody got a handout, but I will give you a brief rundown of the history of down the decades and then also some information about other resources in newspapers that you can use for genealogy. Down the decades actually started in the Sullivan County Record. In 1868, the Record began publishing in Youngsville. It was then called the Local Record or the Callicoon Local Record. W.T. Morgan's was the editor and publisher. A few years later, he sold his concerns to Dewey Royce and Arthur Childs, and they moved to Jeffersonville. So they were based there by 1870. At that time, subscribers paid $1 a year. The advertising cost 50 cents an inch for a week. And the newspaper itself was only 10 by 12.5 inches. So probably half the size of a newspaper page today. And there were only 4 columns. It was described as an independent newspaper devoted to the town and the dissemination of news. By the 1940s, the Record was owned by William Lieb. Charles Hick was a columnist, and he was also the town of Callicoon historian. A lot of people look back for information about the town's foundation and the churches or the history of the schools, you can look back for his columns by searching in the Sullivan County Record. He was also the county historian from 1952 to 59. And briefly, he was an editor at the Sullivan County Record, but then he had a health concern and had to return part-time to the role. The Down the Decades column itself was actually started in 1948 about. Publisher William Lieb apparently had an interest in what he had inherited in the archives of the newspaper. And it was billed as a retrospect of the happenings in Jeffersonville and vicinity since the founding of the Record in 1868. But as sometimes happens, and unfortunately is happening, local newspapers don't always survive. And the Sullivan County Record ceased publication sometime, I think, late 1950s, 58 or so. The Sullivan County Democrat then obtained the rights to publish the Down the Decades column when they ceased to publish. The first column that it appeared in the Democrat in Callicoon was about 72, 73. And this, if you're using it for research, is when you'll begin to see a shift in the 10 years portion of the column to items that appeared in the Sullivan County Democrat. So if you're looking for something that is local to Jeffersonville, you're not as likely to find it in the 10 years after from that time on. And I want to point out here also, I think Donna mentioned earlier something about looking for primary sources. Recently, I discovered looking on Ancestry.com that someone had used Down the Decades as a citation. And I want to point out that that would not be something you could use as a citation because it's a derivative source. And what I mean by derivative is that it uses something else as its origin. It's not a primary source like a certificate that you might receive from a governmental organization. And the genealogy of the Down the Decades changed in the 2000s when we really began working on computers. And at that time, we had a typesetter named Leata Herman. She set up a system where the Decades columns from each issue were saved electronically. Previous to this, she would take out the entire archive book, which is about this big, and it would have to sit next to her table. And as she would type, she would be looking over here at this archive book and typing it each week. So she began saving them first on floppy disks, and now they have their own space on the Democrats' main server. So what I do each week is I prepare basically just the 10 years and make sure that those items that are taken from our electronic archives are included, but we also make sure that, you know, we proofread and we try to catch any typos, and occasionally we will find an error because error is human, and we are certainly humans. We will find an error where someone will write in and say, you know, I think that this item might be incorrect because, to give you an example, someone wrote in and said, I know that my parents never went to college, but there was an item in your paper saying they had just graduated. So I went back about 30 years and I found that 3 lines had been missing. And there were 2 lines where it said his parents got married and then someone else had graduated from college. And somehow those 2 lines changed them into college graduates. Okay, so using the Decades is certainly good for local people, but we don't have a lot of information about New York State resources. And fortunately, we have some free sites that have come in the last 10 years or so. that you can use. I do know there are other paid sources like newspaper.com and a few others, but I've found almost all of my information in researching from these local, or not local, but New York State oriented newspaper sources. One of them is New York State Historic Newspapers.org. It was started by the Northern New York Library Network, and they provide it to collect, preserve, and allow the studies of New York's historic newspapers. They will have a search function that has just changed recently that makes it a lot easier. And I believe they also changed servers so that it's a lot faster, but they found that a lot of people were using the resource and they actually have been adding to it as they go along. And this is on the handout. If you didn't receive one, you can talk to me later and I can give you the URL for it. But all of the newspapers on the site are either in the public domain or have been cleared for usage by the original copyright holder. And that is something to be concerned with if you are intending to publish your information on your family genealogy. The responsibility of using any of those materials rests with the user, so you need to be aware of that. Another source that has been around longer is Fulton History, which he takes donations, but it's primarily a free site. He does provide a number of different source variations or search variations. You can use a search on a particular phrase or a particular time period. But one of the best things about his site is that you're allowed to use a Boolean search, which I could do an entire half hour talking about just how to approach that. It enables you to look for something in relationship to another thing that might lead to a resource that you had been searching for quite a while. So if anybody has a question about that, I can give you a description of it later. One of the items that I wanted to mention about Fulton History is that he has provided this from scans of microfilm. And there's 3 different kinds of microfilm. The first consists of a master negative or the originals. Those are taken from photographs or scans made of the original documents. The second generation is called a print master negative, which is made from the master negative. And the third generation is a service copy. And those are the ones that you'll find at libraries where they have subscribed to the microfilm service that was provided by the newspaper. Unfortunately, a lot of the items that he has gotten have been from libraries where they've already been used and they've been very worn. And so the scans sometimes are very limited in terms of being able to research from them because they're worn, they're scratched, and the optical character recognition software has to work pretty hard to find things to match. So if you tried to lift some of the text that was taken from the scan, you would find gibberish because it really didn't look like a character. And so it turned out to not succeed in what you were looking for. And another source that is through the Library Congress is called Chronicling America. And it is, it's on the handout. It is similar to Fulton History. It's free, but it also has a section where you can choose different types of searching. You can search for a phrase or for a name. But I don't find that many people have used that as frequently. I don't know the reason if they don't know it's there, but it contains newspapers from across the country, not just New York State. And so it is another resource to look for when you're researching your family history, and newspapers, we hope, will continue providing some sort of service to their archives that will allow us to do research in genealogy.
All right. Before I walk off with that on me.
I just watched that wire. Okay, Ruth, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I think that was great and I learned a lot myself, so thank you. Okay, who's up next? I don't have the sheet. Lynn? Oh, no, we switched that. So let me see, who's next? Okay, Suzanne. So we have Suzanne Cecil, the president of the Sullivan County Historical Society, and she's coming up right now. Do you want me to clip this on you? I think that's probably.
There you go. See if I can trip over it. Hello, I'm Suzanne Cecil. I'm president of the Sullivan County Historical Society in Hurleyville. First off, I'd like to tell a little bit about myself. I am not a lifelong resident of Sullivan County. I had no connection with the hotels or anything else until I moved here in 1966. So I am a relative newcomer to the area, but I feel proud I know so much about Sullivan County. At the museum in Hurleyville, first of all, it is a museum. And when you clean out your attic, you don't know what to do with the stuff, you give a call and ask if we want it. We're like the Smithsonian on a local level. So we inherit all the things that you no longer want, nor that your children want. It was mentioned earlier, I think Donna mentioned that when she's done with all her research, her family probably won't want it. Places like us and her museum here just might want that information. I do want to make reference to some of the things that were already said. One was Ancestry. We do have Ancestry.com at the museum. So if you've never used it, like to try it out, you can come and use ours just to see if it's something you would like to subscribe to. The only thing is, because it is on our public computers, you would not be saving your tree to it, but you could use it for references. Family Search, I believe that's the one where the whole world is on one family tree, and you can add to it, but you have to be careful. Not everything that is added is accurate. Someone makes a mistake or something, then it gets handed down generation after generation. A site that I like to use and I use a lot is called findagrave.com. Find a Grave is hundreds of thousands of cemeteries all over the world. I have visited most of the cemeteries in Sullivan County. I take pictures of gravestones. I've done about 25,000 pictures and memorials on Find a Grave. I've also added about 10 cemeteries that did not exist on Find a Grave. When I first came working at the museum back in 2016, I went to look up information on the Jewish cemeteries in Sullivan County. They were definitely lacking. Most people don't know that in Glenwild, that there's a Jewish cemetery for South Fallsburg, for Mountaindale, Woodridge, Woodburn, Workman Circle. And there's the Glenwild Cemetery. There's also a Glenwild Synagogue Cemetery. They are all very adjacent to each other. Most of them did not exist on Find a Grave until I added them to it. The same thing in Monticello. If you go to where Landfield Avenue Cemetery is, there's Brotherhood Cemetery right next to it. There's a Workman Cemetery. There's a cemetery that was called the Liberty Street Synagogue Cemetery on Liberty Street in Monticello, a block up from St. Peter's Church. the Baptist church was a synagogue. They had their own cemetery. And then over the years between it and Landfield Avenue, they merged. So I believe that's all under Landfield Avenue at this time. And I have found other cemeteries. People ask, well, how can you find a grave? Well, I say lots of luck, because people in other parts of the country will say, go speak to the sexton, go to the office. There are no offices at any cemetery in Sullivan County. If you're lucky, if it's a religious cemetery, Catholic, whatever, the church in town may be able to help you if their records are kept up to date. And with recent mergers, you wonder what's going to happen to their records in the future. Back in 1929, a woman named Gertrude Barber did go to all the cemeteries, not just in Sullivan County, but in many places. And she wrote down who was buried in the various cemeteries and the information from the gravestones. That information is still good today, but she wrote it in 1929. People kept dying afterwards. So there's a lot of names missing from that. As I said, I have visited almost all the cemeteries in Sullivan County. A lot of the old ones don't have good records. What Russell was talking about with the Poorhouse Cemetery, I know who he was talking about because they did come to the museum to research where that cemetery is. There are several abandoned cemeteries in the town of Thompson, which the town of Thompson historian has to make sure that the lawns get mowed a couple of times during the year and that they are cared for. Back in, let's say, 1980s, 90s, there was a woman at the museum named Charlotte Osterhout. This is before cell phones and cameras that didn't use film. She went to many of the cemeteries with her notebook and pencil and wrote down everything that was on the gravestones, then would come back to the museum and they would type it all out. We have her bound her books on all of that cemetery information. But she passed away around 2005. So anything after that is not there. It takes a lot to keep it all up to date. Another area that we have a very extensive collection on is obituaries. I saved the obituaries in the paper. We have, in fact, this past week, a collection of 4 loose leaf binders of obituaries that a family member saved. We have thousands and thousands of obituaries. Sometimes I'll hear from an attorney looking up information that has to verify something from an obituary due to an estate claim. And it always makes me feel good when we can actually find that information for them. Earlier today, you mentioned census records. Yes, we do have census books. We have some of our census books are only available through us. We have the actual books. We also have the many census books on microfilm. It's much easier if you know which page it was on in the census book. It's easier to make a copy from the microfilm because you cannot take those large books unless you use your cell phone and make a copy that way. You cannot put those large books on a copier. Marriage records. While we don't house marriage records, we do have a collection of marriage records, mostly from the Monticello area that date back to the early 1900s. The only way we would have a marriage record or a death certificate or a birth certificate in our files is if someone shared a copy they had. We're not a repository. We are not the place you would go looking for it, but maybe we might have yours if a family member had donated it. We have what we call the people file. Whatever your last name is, there's a good chance we have a file with that last name. And if someone has done research and they've given us copies, it'll be in that last name of the people file. if you were doing research on your family, one of the first things we do is give you a copy of that file. You would have to go through it and pick out which ones are really in your line. I hate it when someone comes in and says their last name is Smith, because it's impossible to separate that out. Going back to funeral records, we do have some funeral records that we sort of inherited from a funeral parlor that has gone out of business. There are time frames for things like death certificates. In order to get a death certificate, I believe it's 50 years, unless you're family. To get a birth certificate, I believe it's 75 years, unless you're family. Or if you need to express a specific need that you do need that. Let's see. Newspapers, we have many newspapers, some on microfilm, some actual newspapers. A few years ago, the person whose family owned the Republican Watchman donated their complete set of Republican Watchman newspapers to us. They at one time were used as part of a New York State newspaper project where they were put on microfilm. We had them on microfilm, but Republican Watchman had a few fires. And if you go to Fulton History and you're looking at the Republican Watchman, you may see newspaper pages that look like they had been in a fire. Yes, they were, and you can't read the whole page. But we have some years that were never part of this project. So we did a donation campaign and had several years that didn't exist online before digitized. We have them on microfilm, and also we have them on New York Historic newspapers. So if you go to the New York Historic newspaper site, and when you're looking something up, if it comes up with Republican Watchman on that site, that's because we had our papers digitized and gave it to that site for them to use. The Liberty Public Library has the Liberty Register on their website, and it's free to use, and it is searchable. A few things that people might not think about in doing research might be a telephone directory. We have, not the ones of today, but the ones that were real telephone directories, where if you look at the old Sullivan County directories, you'd have several pages of hotels and businesses. That doesn't happen today. I had a case where someone had to prove that a doctor had an office at a certain time in history, and we used the telephone book of that year that showed, yes, he had his office there. So they can be very useful as far as verifying some information. Someone was looking for the name of a taxi company in South Fallsburg from the 50s. We were able to find it by using our old telephone directories. We have a high school yearbook collection. We have many, many yearbooks, but we don't have all. Some schools we are missing, we only have a couple, but some schools like Liberty and Fallsburg and Monticello and a few others, we have a big collection of yearbooks. Every once in a while in our newsletter, I'll make a list of, do you have one of these yearbooks you'd like to donate to add to our collection? And this helps in many ways of finding out about people that were in your class, things like that. We have old maps of Sullivan County, and on some of the old maps, the Beers maps, they will show not just the street, but the name of the person living in various houses on the street. So those are useful. We have a postcard collection at the museum. One of the big things people ask about are the hotels. We have a big postcard collection that is kept up to date because of Lynn Priebe over here, who also volunteers at our museum besides this museum. And on Tuesdays, she's usually there working on the postcards. And her sister is usually there filing all the obituaries I've collected for the week. So even though they're involved with other museums, they have time for us. Our museum, as I said, is not just genealogy. It's all kinds of things related to the county. For your research for genealogy, you can do it a couple of ways. We prefer you make an appointment and come in and see for yourself what we have. But for people who live far away, they may request us to do the research for them. And yes, we do charge a fee for that. It does take longer to get the results. If I'm looking up something on your family, I might see something and think, oh, that's not too important. But if you were there to read it yourself, maybe I came across something that you never knew about a family member. So if you're able to come in and check the things yourself, it'll be better for you than trusting me or other volunteers there. We are an all-volunteer organization. There's nobody that gets paid. Usually Tuesdays, you'll find one of us there. Other days by appointment. We have people when they're vacationing from far away, they will arrange to come up and do research. We'll give them as much guidance as we have. And we just have so many things at the museum. If you haven't been there, and I'm sure there's people in this room that's never been to the museum because we hear that all the time, you're really welcome to come. On the back table, I have some forms. We have an email list. When there's an event, I'll send out an email. If you would like to be included in that, just fill out the form with your email address and I will add you to it. At our museum, we have a second organization, the Frederick Cook Society. Some of you are aware of that because they often have concerts on Sunday afternoon with Little Sparrow performing. So those kinds of activities would be on the email list, plus whatever other activities that we are involved with. So thank you.
I really appreciate it. I take this off now. There we go.
Super. Thank you very much.
Just watch that cord. Okay, so I think our next speaker is Nicole Richardson. Sorry, you ready? She is the program associate from the Daniel Pierce Library, and she is going to be talking about the library and their genealogical resources. I guess so. This is so complicated.
I think I'm a little short for the podium, but I'll do my best and be on my tippy toes today. So as Donna said, I'm Nicole Richardson. I'm more here to talk to you about library resources. Many of our presenters already talked to you about genealogy. They know much more than I do about that subject as a whole. But as a library, if you're a member or you're not a member of the Daniel Pierce Library, we have lots of resources for you to tap into. So if it's just a book on wanting to figure out how do you get started in the genealogy search, if you're looking for your family background, I'm going to tap into a little bit about what we have in our library or the RCLS system, which is the Ramaco Catskill Library System, which is 47 libraries are within that system. So if we don't have it, and you can't get it from us here and you're coming in, or if you have a card, you just tap into our website, www.danielpiercelibrary.org. And if you're researching and looking for a book, specific book, or if you're looking for a CD or something on tape, and we don't have it, when you log into the RCLS system via our website, or there's an app called RCLS Go, and you use your library card, and your PIN code, you can get access to all of those 47 libraries and everything that they have to offer in their database. And some people don't realize that. They don't realize that the library here in town, they figure, oh, I'm not a member of that library, but you can come in at any time, whether you're a member or you're not a member, use our computer system, use our staff knowledge. If you're looking for information on our local history, we have our local history room. Mickey Green, which is our assistant director, would be the go-to person for that specific thing if you're looking for any local or town or county information. To get access to that room, you would have to call the library, stop in and speak to Mickey. Those resources are, here for you to look at, not to take out. You will need an appointment to do so. It's one book at a time, and you will need to be a member of the RCLS system, have a library card in hand. But one of the other resources that we have are our research database. If you go onto our website or any of the RCLS system websites, that database, as some of us touched on, or some of the presenters touched on a little bit before, will guide you through. I did do a handout earlier today that kind of guides you through the process if you're trying to get into that database and you're just looking for any information on genealogy or different resources. As some people touched on before, you can get there by obviously going to our website, as I said, clicking on the research database, and then go through the bottom of that page and go A to Z resources. You want to click in genealogy, but then it'll bring up things like the ancestry.com, Chronicles of America, which somebody touched on earlier, Digital Public Library of America, Family Research. It just gives you hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of access to different databases. That's much better than a Google search. A Google search, anybody could write and put something out there into the web. But the library database, as I said, that you can get to through that handout that I showed you, you can see how to get onto it. I'm happy to show you any day you want to come into the library. Any one of our staff members are happy to show you. So if you're looking for something for yourself, or you're just trying to get into genealogy, that database is written by professionals. It's accurate, up-to-date information. It's non-biased. It's just not something that you just can get to because you did a Google search. So it's just going to give you more refined research and access to specific research pages. And as I said, that handout can give you a little bit more information about the different sites, but there's hundreds and hundreds of sites on there that you can get to. And so, as I mentioned before, we have a couple of apps that you can get onto with your library card. I talked to you a little bit about the local history room. I'm happy to give you a tour today if you want to. It's a small room, but our library, as you see, is beautiful. It's got its own history in itself if you haven't been here before. And we have lots of resources that are at your fingertips. Besides that, we bought a couple of books today if you want to see what kind of things you can access at our library or some of our local libraries. We ourselves took some of these books out from some of the surrounding area libraries. As I said earlier, that if we don't have it, somebody has it. Like, you can find it through one of the 47 libraries that are part of the RCLS system. Our building was, the first little part of our building was built in 1902, 2,300 square feet at your fingertips here at the library, along with the museum to visit and enjoy, with rooting itself in its own history. But we're here to help you. Some people don't realize that all the sources and resources that we have just coming into the library, whether it's CDs, books, DVDs, we have our own section upstairs on our main floor with our town's history. And again, if you want to go beyond that, if you're just researching it or just want general information, and you don't have to be a member. We have day passes here that if you aren't a member of the library itself, that you can utilize our computer systems. We're open Monday through Saturday. We have programs like this, and Donna has programs. So just, go onto our website, see the resources that we have, talk to any one of our librarians and or staff members, and they're happy to help you and utilize that research database. And a lot of you did already speak on that. But there are resources. You just click on them. They're free to you. I want to thank you for having me here today. If you want any more information, I'll be sticking around and happy. Just come up to me. I'm happy to give you a little bit of a tour. And I thank you for having me out today. Thank you, Donna. No, just turn it on. It's okay.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Okay, our last presenter is Lynn Creevy. She's a museum trustee as well as an archivist in our research area, and she's from the Time in the Valleys Museum.
Thanks, Donna. Yeah. Hi. First of all, I have 3 topics, basically. I want to talk a little bit about what our museum mission is and what we would cover for you. The second thing, just some selection of some of the things that we have in our research room and how it works. And then a couple of tips for people when they're working on family history and visiting all of these types of situations that we had here today. So Time in the Valley Museum's mission statement is connecting water, people, and the Catskills. So that's going to help you to know what you're looking for. If you're looking for something from the Catskill reservoirs, New York City reservoir system, we're your place. We have a lot of records on takings of the lands and the families that lived here, and some on the other reservoirs, but mostly Rondout and Neversink Reservoir. People is also our mission. So we're looking for the people who lived in the Catskills. And if you've noticed our Catskill farm up on the hill, you know, we care about the past before the reservoirs came, and we are trying to keep the history of the people alive. If you've ever visited our museum, you'll see that on the bottom floor, we have our reservoir building section and a temporary exhibit on the second floor. Right now, it's gorgeous. It's watercolor paintings of businesses and homes that were taken to build the reservoir. Now, if you have people from this area, maybe your ancestors' houses are pictured there. You might want to check that out. After the exhibit is over, these paintings will be on sale. And if my family's home was there, I sure would want to take a pic. I'd want it, you know. My great grandmother's picture is there, so I'm buying that because I want that, you know, something special. And that's not for everybody. You might want someone else's farm or business, but your own. Make sure you know what's up there so that you can have a chance to own it and proudly display it in your own home. So that's our mission and what we do. So when you think of that, you'll see what we have in our research room, which is open on Thursday afternoons, 1 to 4. And we have a wonderful dedicated staff, and 2 of our staff members are here now, Beverly Muthick and Wanda Twilliger, and myself, and Donna is usually there in the morning. And we have other wonderful volunteer researchers who are there. People do things like help you out if you're doing research, or they're doing transcribing and working on making indexes for all of our holdings, so that when you come in, you can look at Grandma's diary. It's been transcribed. If you couldn't read it's in print now, you'll be able to read what Grandma wrote. So we have an obituary collection. Our obituary collection focuses on the watershed area, and wonderful Sullivan County Historical Society, if they have extras that cover the Neversink, Denning, and Rochester and Ulster County areas, they share it with us because people come here looking for the Gillette family or the Denman family or the Smith family, and we have them here. So we also have had volunteers in the past who've done transcribing of obituaries. There's a man named Frank Carlson. What a wonderful job he did. It's all alphabetized. If you're looking for, he culled obituaries from the Liberty Register and many of the Ellenville Journal, and he writes the whole stories, and that's a wonderful resource. Dale Hoteling from Claryville gave us a wonderful collection of all kinds of family files. So we have binders on family histories. We brought a couple today, like the Denman family, the Devine family, the Dice family. So if you know your families from around here, you might want to come, because then you'll see photos also and write-ups of the businesses, and you can write a better story of your person. Yes, you can find when they were born, when they were married, when they died, but we can tell you, like I can tell you, my grandfather's name was Benny when he was in elementary school, because we have a one-room schoolhouse collection, and Benjamin's name there is listed as Benny. I said, that's a nice little story. And things like that you can find at our collection. We also have topical collections. We have people who've done studies of tanneries or sawmills or washing machines, farming, the Dairyman's League. So many kind of topics like that, which can throw light upon your person's life. And I would encourage you to, when after you find those dates, you want to write their story. You want them to live on. So you want to tell those kind of things about them. And they interact with the history of our county and other places. You're going to find famous people in your family tree when you get right down to it. They're there somewhere, or infamous people too. But we want to know about them. We have a collection of the Townsman paper from Grainsville from 1947 to 1978. So you can, if you know when someone was born or died or worked, a lot of stuff about the founding of Tri-Valley School, because that coordinated with it, and a lot of stuff about building the reservoirs you can find. And we've indexed, we've taken obituaries from there, and we have a volunteer who's working on the newer editions of the Townsman to keep that up to date, so you can find obituaries that you want. We have many scrapbooks or copies of scrapbooks, and we've made index of them. A lot of them have mostly obituaries, but there might be some stories about the happenings also that could be fun, and we index that for you. We have a great collection of the summer homes brochures that were put out by the O&W Railroad. That's kind of something you don't want to handle all the time because it's kind of rare, but you can find out about the old boarding houses from that, and that's a wonderful resource. We have yearbooks too, but they're only Tri-Valley yearbooks, but we have a really good collection of Tri-Valley Central School yearbooks. And then, as I said, we also have the one-room schoolhouse collection, because whenever we do an exhibit, we do research and we make binders on it, so we have extra information. We keep adding to them. So if you want to find out what school your ancestor went to, what their nickname was when they were in school, you can find that here. So we're a good place to visit too. Now, if you want to come see us, I got some tips for you. You let us know ahead of time what you're looking for, because we, like I said, we're here on Thursdays, but we can come have an appointment with you. And if we know what your targeted research is, we can help you out. Try not to have us say, okay, I'm doing this family, I want everything on it, because we can't do that right away. But you know, if you're looking for some specific branch of your family, we can help you with that. Let's see what else. Also, in the packet that we gave you, we did give you addresses for the county government, county seats of each county in the lower Hudson Valley. You might want to contact them, because has been said before, if you come, like Suzanne said, you will do much better and they can help you much better. So if you want to visit a place like that, the most important thing is to contact them ahead of time, either by letter, email, or phone call. Tell them what you're looking for, find out when you can go, what their rules are. You know, there's a lot of those people, they're very busy with other things, but they want to help you, but they need you to not just walk in on them and say, I'm looking for, give them a warning. And after you've seen them, don't forget to send them a thank you, because then they're more likely to want you to come back again, right? So those, and we have one other thing I wanted to say, we gave you forms like family trees. Whenever you go anywhere and you do research and you find anything, put the source that it's from and the date that you found it and where you found it, what organization, because you're going to forget. If you go to a cemetery and take a picture of the grave, take a picture of the grave, but take a wide angle sight of all the graves around it, because man, you're not going to find it again unless you know what section of the cemetery is in, because there's nobody to help you find them. And the other thing to remember is that when you have a photo of your family member that's your mom or your aunt, please write on it. We get so many wonderful photos here. We have a book here today with pictures of people we don't know who they are. We might know what family they're from because the family donated them, but we don't know who they are, and we never will know. It's going to just get worse and worse. So it's up to you to keep your family record. Another tip is don't take anything as gospel truth. A gravestone can be wrong. A death certificate can give the wrong date of birth, and you're always going to be refining your information. And of course, sometimes you have to go to New York State. You can go up to New York State Library and they have a genealogy room. It's a really nice place and they'll help you. And I have done research up there because I'm a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution. And as Ruth said, you can't use what's in the newspaper. You have to have the document and you have to have an official record. So Russell Reeves, his kind of records, the county seat records, what you'll find at the New York City Genealogical Library, which is a really good one, or New York State, are places you want to go to get the as true as possible answer for what you're looking for. I think that's it, people. So now it's your time. You can go around and talk to individual people, or we'll come to you and try to help you with your individual questions so you can get started or continue on your wonderful trip up the family tree. Thank you. I don't know.
All right, thank you so much, Lynn. Thank you all for coming. As Lynn said, please go around, talk to people,
Get as much information as you can. I know there's at least 2 people I'm going to be talking to here to get more information. And also the museum exhibits are open if you'd like to do that, the gift shop, and sign up for our mailing list if you aren't already on it, or emailing list. All right, thank you again all for coming, and especially to the presenters.